What does the future hold for this Denver Broncos team? Had you asked us that question 2 weeks ago when we were sitting at 1-4, my guess is most people in Broncos Country would have said it is time to sell, sell, sell. Get whatever you can for Pat Surtain. Let's get rid of Justin Simmons. Let's kiss Russell Wilson goodbye. Let's sell, 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 and hope for Caleb Williams. But I think 2 games winning in a row has us looking completely different at the future of this Broncos team. And it's not just the fact that we won 2 games going into the bye week, 2 games at home. It's the fact that we looked so dominant in both of those games. So to answer that question, what does the future hold for this Broncos team in the immediate future and the long-term future? I think it's really helpful to also look back at the past because we have some losses on the schedule that when we had planned the year weren't losses. But I think when we look at them with a little hindsight, we'll feel a little better about where we're at this year. So looking back here, obviously we lost a heartbreaking first game against the Raiders at home. But if you think about that game, Will Lutz missed his only field goal of the game, which would have given us an extra 3 points, and then he missed an extra point, which would have tied the game. So while we lost to the Raiders, we have not had Lutz miss a field goal since then. And that loss all of a sudden looks a lot better, knowing that right now the Raiders are playing the Lions, and my guess is they're going to lose. We should be tied with the Raiders after this game tonight. So that loss doesn't look so bad. Looking at the Commanders' loss, yeah, that was a bad loss on paper, but that was the most dominant first half of a game that I've seen. That might be until this last game against the Chiefs. That might be the most dominant we've seen Russell Wilson. But we were up 14-3 at the end of the first quarter, up big at halftime, and ended up losing just an absolute fluky and heartbreaking game there to the Commanders. And then comes the true outlier that really has people across the NFL questioning what happened in this game, and that is the absolute demolishing of the Denver Broncos by the Miami Dolphins, the 70-20 game, the game that Broncos fans will never forget, although we certainly hope to. Vance Joseph certainly hopes to forget it as well. And there's a lot of speculation on what happened that game. There's the Vic Fangio revenge game. There's just the fact that Miami is an absolute party destination and we're guys out late the night before and didn't really take it too seriously, and it's a bad loss. An encouraging thing is that a lot of times after a massive loss like that, you could see teams start to phone it in. They were 0-3 going into that, and that was a huge low point. Could they have shut it down going into Soldier Field against the Bears, which is a hard place to play? Certainly they could have, but they didn't, and they pulled off a comeback victory, even though looking at that Bears game, they were down 21-7 at the end of the half. They were down 28-7, and they came back. So I think right there you're starting to see the bright point of this is that the difference between a Nathaniel Hackett Broncos team, a Vic Fangio Broncos team, a Vance Joseph-led Broncos team is that Sean Payton Broncos teams do not give up. They were 0-3 in the season, having just come off a massive, one of the biggest losses in NFL history, and despite the fact that they were down 3 scores to the Chicago Bears in Chicago, they gutted it out and got a win. They bounced back, and that was our first win of the season. It was massive. It was fantastic. Flash forward 1 week in the future, and this week, this game was a loss that I think a lot of us are discouraged by, and that was the loss to the New York Jets. Who knows what happened in this game, but I do not view that Jets loss as bad as I did at the time. Then we had what every single person predicting the season had as a schedule loss, and that was a Thursday night, a short week after playing the New York Jets, going to Kansas City, where we have not played well in a long time. And the really, really, really encouraging thing about this first game against the Kansas City Chiefs was that we held the Chiefs to less points than they'd been held at any other point in that season, and we started to show that we had the blueprint for Patrick Mahomes. We saw how that turned out the other night, and that's fantastic, but we showed again that we were resilient, and we didn't give up when we could have, and after that game, we were 1-5. So had you asked us then at 1-5, what's the future of the Broncos with our only win being against the abysmal Bears, we all would have said it's time to sell at the trade deadline. But this is where everything starts to change and where you see that the NFL is the best league in the entire world because of the parity, because you don't have every single Super Bowl championship being the Los Angeles Lakers or whoever LeBron James is playing for at the time. The NFL, anyone can win any week. That's why the saying is any given Sunday. We start to see it in this week as the Broncos start to turn around, and I think this is where we start to build for our playoff push. I broke this down last week, but I was really encouraged by this Packers game. Yes, it looks on paper like we beat the lowly Packers by 2 points at home, but the fact is teams play amazing off of their bye week, and we beat the Packers coming off their bye week in a must-win game when their hopes were riding high. They got their running back. And while we only won by 2 points, the 2 Jordan Love touchdowns were the biggest garbage touchdowns I've ever seen, with Pat Surtain certainly picking off a ball and seeing that the other touchdown was off of Jordan Love threw it so far behind one receiver that it bounced off his hands and miraculously into the hands of another person. Both of those would have been turnovers and 0 points. And so you're looking right there at the Packers basically legitimately scored 3 points on this Broncos defense. And so you look at 3 points in that game, 19 points the week before to the Chiefs, and then yesterday, my goodness, I'm still riding high off of the first time Pat Mahomes has ever lost on the road to a divisional opponent, the first time Pat Mahomes has ever lost to us. If you look at Pat Mahomes' 100-plus games, it's statistically his worst game that he's ever played. And so if you really look at these past 3 weeks, Vance Joseph-led defense has been the best defense in the entire NFL, and that's not hyperbole. That is a fact. And so let's look forward, Broncos. In context, we beat 2 garbage teams in the Packers and in the Bears, but we also beat what everyone has as the best team in the entire NFL in the Chiefs. And we didn't just beat them, we beat them more handily than even the Lions did in week 1. That was the biggest shellacking that Patrick Mahomes has had in his career, in my opinion. And so there is a lot of hope in there that when this team could have given up, we didn't give up, and we didn't let the weight of 16 games weigh on us. We conquered. And so looking forward at our next games, looking here at the Broncos against the Bills, Monday Night Football, 15 days. It's really 2 weeks from when this video is going to drop. And that is going to be a very, very big game for the Broncos. Now, next week, the Bills have Cincinnati, and so they will have Cincinnati on Sunday night. They will be tired. They'll be exhausted. There's a lot of emotion in that game because it was the Bills against the Bengals where that DeMar Hamlin hit happened last year. So there's emotion in that game, and so are they going to be so amped up from that game that they'll look past us perhaps? Now, again, I told you earlier that teams off their bye week are very good. And so Broncos, in my opinion, have a very good chance at winning in Buffalo. If we held Pat Mahomes to 9 points and kept him out of the end zone, why can't we do similarly to Josh Allen? You put Pat Surtain on Diggs, and I think he can shut him down. And then just like if you shut down Kelsey, who else does he have? Who else does Josh Allen have? And so I feel good about that. But even if I don't, let's say we lose that, and next week we're 3-6, we've seen Sean Payton teams don't give up. They keep pushing forward. We then go and play the Vikings. And when this season, the schedule came out, we were really nervous about the Vikings game. But that Vikings team is not the Vikings team of last year, who the Netflix show was all about. That Vikings team looks a lot more beatable. They are not the same team as last year. Don't have Dalvin Cook. It's a huge part. They've been missing that amazing wide receiver, Justin Jefferson, and now, crucially, they lost Kirk Cousins. And so I think right away you're talking that Vikings game that was probably a loss for a lot of us when we play in the year. Now I pencil that in as a win. And so now instead of now you're 4-6. Next week the Browns, and Browns missing Deshaun Watson, I think you're 5-6. Next week the Texans, who are young, and I think you are back to 500 against the Texans. We play the Chargers, and the Chargers going Charger. And despite how bad we've been these past couple of years, we always play the Chargers really well. Playing them when we've been 500, that game is in San Diego, rather Los Angeles, which is going to be a home game. A lot of Broncos fans going out there. So I think right there you're 7-6. going to the Lions. Now, I'm living in Michigan now, and so I'm going to show up at that game. I'm going to be loud, and I'm going to make a difference. But I think that is the toughest game that we have left on our schedule. That I think right there, that is where I think the playoffs hinge. Can we beat the Lions on December 17th? Let's say we can. We're 8-6. Patriots, another win, 9-6. Chargers, let's say we split the game with the Chargers and we're 9-7. We beat the Raiders at the end and we're 10-7. And I think that's what it takes to make the playoffs. So had you asked us several weeks ago, do we have a shot? I would have said absolutely not. But I think we have seen resolve and excitement from this Broncos team. And I truly, just like I called the Broncos beating the Chiefs and everyone thought I was crazy, I think the Broncos are going to make the playoffs. I think they're going to get to 10 wins, and I hope you're along for the ride so they do that. So make sure you like, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any of it. And Broncos Country, it's always time to ride.